Hi all, I had quite an interesting game last night against Wanstead. So Bon and Elizabethans, we were away at Wanstead Chess Club. I was playing an international master, Artur Sygulski. I think he's a Polish international master. So I was playing white. I kicked off with e4 and he chose the Sicilian defence. I thought I'd give the Smith-Morra gambit a try, or Morra-Smith as I sometimes say. C takes c3. And he played a popular response actually, not to take or g6, knight f6, but in fact d3, that's a popular response as well. But it's not supposed to be too bad. Bishop takes d3. We have d6 here, and now this is actually one of the more popular moves, c4, when I played. So we've got this kind of Maroczy bind on that d5 square. Knight c6, knight e2. I didn't want to go straight into a pin. I wanted to be able to play f3, g6. So yes, his dart square play is very, very logical. And I was thinking, yeah, did I really get much from the opening position here? But anyway, bishop g5, things get extremely interesting very quickly from here. h6, I go to h4, knight e5, and I was thinking, I don't really want to do this. It's tactically possible, because knight takes c4, that's queen a4. But I didn't want to sort of have my rook like trapped in like this. I just thought, well, you know, maybe something like this, and then b3, and it's like awkward on this diagonal. If you can never use this diagonal later, I'm going to have to spend time with my pieces, and there might even be g5 and knight g6. I didn't really fancy that. So I kind of, yeah, sort of positional sacrifice of the bishop pair. I played f4. Just to be able to sort of play e5 quickly. Knight takes d3, queen takes d3, and I don't think he needed to be worried actually about e5. He could have just castled here. If we look at e5, it's not really working here. I think a better move is just h3. Maybe e5 later, but you know, if e5 too quickly here, you can just take. F takes knight g4, hits e5 quite hard. Bishop takes rook e8, and black's doing fine. Black's better. In fact, all the pieces are active. I've got weaknesses, so that wasn't really a concern. I think this might have been a slight overreaction, and it made the game extremely sharp and exciting. He actually played g5. I thought, can he really do this? This idea of the f file, about getting a knight on e5, the strong e5 square. And I probably can just take it and weather the storm. The engines don't indicate anything major for black there, but I played a bit of a chicken move, bishop g3, and yet he took now on f4. I'm not sure this is the best. Knight takes f4, and I have got quite a dangerous f file. Now h5, and I thought this was just really strong for me, bishop h4, stopping h4 from black and threatening knight d5. I just thought, where is he going to castle? So yeah, I was kind of optimistic here. Of course he's got the e5 square, and that's what he's playing for, knight g4. But I think, you know, I've been collecting some thoughts about this game, obviously, since last night, fresh off the press last night. The knight, you know, would seem strong on e5, because there's no adjacent pawns to kick the knight. But tactically, you know, forcing moves can undermine the knight potentially, and the whole black position if you get the right forcing moves. And here there is actually good coordination of pieces, so I think the justification for finding important resources, including forcing moves, is much higher than usual. There's no major tactical liabilities. There's a positional concession, the e5 square, but if I can find some amazing tactical resources, I think even if he gets the knight to e5, it's a bit shaky, his position, and we're going to see that in the notes, the analysis which I want to show you. We're going to see that black's position is a bit shaky, as you might suspect here. Knight fd5, perhaps more accurate, is actually knight d5, because if the e7 is a bit of a problem. If f6, then knight g6 is dangerous. So already, you know, this is a very, very dangerous looking position. I think, you know, clearly worse for black. And yes, I should have done this. Knight cd5. It's difficult to see what exactly black is doing in this sort of position. You know, is black actually totally busted here already? Just quick confirm this position here. I mean, knight g6, black's best is like to play something like this. That can't be too good. This looks absolutely horrible. So yeah, just knight cd5. I don't know why I didn't really. I should have really considered that to be quite a strong move. If knight e5, then the queen moves, bishop f8. This just looks horrendous. It looks just very, very bad for black. But I'm going to turn off the engine now. I'm going to try and minimize the engine being on, actually. So once I quickly just make sure about knight cd5 being technically stronger. But knight fd5 looks also pretty strong. So this horrible concession now for the e7 pawn. So he plays this really, I thought it can't be happening. This IM is having to play f6. Okay, he's justifying it positionally with the e5 knight, but surely it's a little bit shaky here. And the thing is, this g file is also dangerous. Imagine if black's king's castle, this is a pin on the bishop. But it's not so easy to say, how do you actually concretely break down black's position here? Okay, I should have used the other knight earlier, but yeah, there'll be something to break down in the other variation. But here, black's position isn't so solid either. And I played a reasonably good move, actually, c5, to try and open things up. So this is really kind of dangerous for black. He plays d takes, and I just play rook ad1. So he can't even castle now immediately because there's things like knight takes f6, hitting the queen. So I thought this is a fantastic position. What is he up to? He played bishop d7. And now I go a bit crazy, but there is, I just thought my position was really quite interesting here. And potentially, couldn't I use this h pawn to stop him castling if I could kick the knight away? So I play this move e5, trying to get the knight away for queen e2 to look at h5. So I thought this was dangerous, this position. But it turns out actually the queen has got access to g3 here. It turns out technically there's a much better idea which hadn't occurred to me, but it shows actually the power of forcing moves to soften and make insecure what seems to be secure. It really is quite a precarious position for black, and with some accurate moves, black could get blown away. So instead of e5, in fact, it turns out here queen g3 is really, really strong. I'm not sure how many of you would see this idea. Let me just show you. So black castles h3. So we've got the pin on the bishop. The knight goes to e5, and it seems, yes, this is what black wants, that knight on e5. And if he can survive, maybe that's interesting in the future, this position with the knight on e5 as a prelude to improving the position later with maybe not e6 here. But this structure actually, e6 kind of highlights that f6 is weak. This structure is a little bit unstable. Now I wonder how many of you would find the engine move here. I'm giving you a clue, of course, that there's something suspect about black's position. What would you play in here in this position if I give you 5 seconds starting from now? Okay, it turns out knight takes e7. It kind of undermines black's position, especially the knight on e5. The queen's not only pinning the bishop, it's eyeing e5. So taking, we have knight d5, and this looks really dangerous. Queen e6, say, rook takes f6, and what is black doing? Rook takes, bishop takes, and both e5 and g7 now. It illuminates, the piece sacrifice illuminates a double attack here in this variation, which at least wins material. That's very, very crushing, just winning material like that with a crushing position. And if we look at these variations here, it just seems this is devastation for black, this position. If queen e8, bishop takes f6, knight g6, trying to defend g7. But this position is really strong. Queen g5, So there's things like knight e7 now and queen h5 on the cards, and knight e7 immediately, knight takes, queen takes is mate there. So if black has to give up material, this is crushing. It just shows, black's position, which is torn apart through forcing moves. And I wish I had seen this idea of knight takes e7. Yeah, chess made simple from an engine's perspective. It's so simple that this is absolute devastation. Queen d6, knight takes f6 just wins the queen, if nothing else. Yeah, I'm a bit gutted. I could have put my IM opponent away. This is crushing, this sort of stuff. Even if we get this position with some resourcefulness, I'll end up like the exchange up here. So yeah, it seems, this idea, queen g3, just looking at e5 and g7, it's not really protected that much. G7 and e5, once these two pawns are eliminated, and to increase the pressure on these two, that actually becomes a double attack. So it's a kind of double attack in the making. But I guess it's very hard sometimes to spot these tactics in the course of a running live over the ball game, not like post-mortem research as with an engine. It's just very hard to find these resources. I thought e5 looked really dangerous. Knight takes queen e2 just to stop him castling. And here if bishop g4, well, I thought there's all sorts of things. Knight takes would win the queen with check. So he castles here, though, and if queen takes now, then bishop g4 traps my queen. Nevertheless, I played h3, so I've still got this on the card, still got good pressure. But now he offers an exchange sack. Things get very interesting. And perhaps I should have actually gone for this exchange sack. I was a bit wary about accepting it. But there's a certain version of this which is really, really favourable for white. The version I was looking at was something like this: knight c7 here, knight takes, and I thought for some reason that this position was okay for black because he's just going to play bishop c6 next. But there's a great tactic here which demonstrates black's position is really loose. Which makes actually queen g6 unplayable. Can you spot a tactic here? Yeah, appearance is just very deceptive. And certainly I would have gone for this with this possibility. It's much more tempting to go into this line, rather. Can you see what white plays if I give you 5 seconds? Rook takes d7. And then there's queen e6 picking up material. If we try and improve for black, queen f7, interestingly, knight takes a8 here. There's a tactic here which wins material. Can you spot it? Queen takes e5, rook takes, and then piece up again. Yeah, it's just yeah. I know, it's terrible. It was a tactical game, and I thought this was reasonably okay to get a small advantage anyway. Bishop g3. I didn't want to be materialistic. I should have been. And now he plays bishop c6. That bishop is not only surviving, it's on this diagonal now. I take on e5, f takes, and I still think this is okay because I'm getting a pawn back and his king's being compromised. Rook takes. So if bishop takes, there's queen takes. Takes for the queen. Queen takes. I've got a pawn back. And now he plays bishop f6. I still thought this is really very dangerous for black, this position here. Rook d3 as though, rook g3, and now he plays queen g7. And I can either play king h2 or what I played, which is knight e4, to try and get rook g3 in. And I still thought this is really very, very nice. I'm going to win his queen. But it's to do with what version of winning the queen actually. Like winning the exchange, there's certain versions you've got to look out for, and I don't choose a particularly good version of winning the queen here. I know this is like a tactical comedy of inaccuracy, but there's a specific way of winning the queen in this position. So what would you say? Take on f6 first, rook g3, or something else? Is there something else as a prelude to rook g3 here? What would you play in this position if I give you 5 seconds? if you might want to research it, there's a way of totally dismantling the black position again. Well, not totally, but much more significantly than the game. Okay, in the game I played knight d takes f6, which actually healed his pawns, and I got some stick for that from teammates after. But I don't think this is the right way anyway. You know, or even rook g3. This isn't. It gives black some options here of the queen sack. Either bishop takes for rook and bishop, which isn't entirely, you know, that bad. In some variations, but black has to be careful, of course, of things like this. But you know, maybe it's just about okay. There might be other ways of doing the queen sack here. Instead of bishop takes, just queen takes, maybe to get the knight to g3, then bishop takes. And you know, this sort of thing, it is looking dangerous. It is. This is looking winning. No, black has to actually play extremely carefully here to rook g3. Just for a moment, let's just check again this position. Now, queen takes g3 is not brilliant actually. Knight d takes f6. And if here knight takes g3, this is much better for white. Black's best might be bishop takes d5. If I take. Now this is toss up between the bishop and the king. Bishop takes. And white's a bit better here. Knight takes c5. Yeah, I think I was concerned about the dark square bishop maybe unnecessarily. This is okay for white. But you know, black's got some chances, I guess, practical chances. So let's see. Anyway, so in the game, I chose knight d takes f6, which may be inferior, just to rook g3. So e takes, now rook g3. I think I miscalculated on queen g4. It was no problem. Queen g4. His bishop's coming back to g6. So I take here. I thought queen g4 was good, but it's not. Just bishop g6. And he's got a bit of a fortress, so I've kind of messed up a few tactical possibilities in this game. To be honest, just before we pass again, you know, what does the engine think of the choice here? You know, if we look at the choices here, I think rook g3 is the second strongest choice, a little bit better than taking with either the d knight or the e knight. Not by much actually. No, but the very strongest move to dismantle black. So that was the original question which I asked. Is actually knight takes e7 is the most dismantling for black. So that after bishop takes, there's rook g3 here, and you see that e5 is weak. So say bishop takes like this. And black is a lot more dismantled here. Can't even take here because the queen takes b7 check, winning the bishop. So something like this, and this is nice for what, you know, we're talking like +3. There might be some resistance for a bit, you know, rook and bishop, but ultimately, you know, I'm a pawn up as well, so that would have been fantastic as well. But yeah, so I let him off the hook really in this version. It's all about, you know, you've got to get the best possible version really, whether it was like winning the exchange or winning the queen, the best possible version of events to aim for. Of course, that's why you know to spend the time. And here, you know, I still thought it was quite dangerous. He mentioned queen c8 after. From an engine point of view, you know, I think some key moments have gone to really like shake, you know, the black's position apart. We're ending up here where I should have perhaps just protected this pawn and try and maintain some pressure. Maybe instead it's kind of simplified now into a more clear kind of fortress. After check here, king h6, I play check to force the king back, and you know it's going to be a draw here. He doesn't really want to play anything else. I can move my king off here, and it's going to be difficult for me to do anything there. So yeah, I think what I take from the game at the moment, and is if we go back to certain key moments, there's this idea that in principle there was actually a double attack, which is often, a very, very common way of winning games, actually, tactically. The double attack concept. It just seems as though I'm doubling attack against protected pieces. But if we look at this, when it's, although the pieces are protected at the moment, if we look at this line with Queen G3, by stripping away these two pawns, you can see that actually black's position becomes really, really loose after knight takes E7. Once you strip away that kind of resource structure underneath, supporting the pieces, it's like black's getting torn apart. There's just lots and lots of weaknesses here to exploit. That's really a great way of undermining pawn structure tactically with a knight sacrifice, and to get the underlying double attacks on pieces, which are actually quite loose. There was that moment, but later, the moment of winning the exchange here, because I just thought it was like winning the exchange, but in fact there's a much better version where I'm actually this bishop, because of this weakened diagonal here, is also a tactical liability. I didn't really, unfortunately, I don't know, I was just too concerned with not wanting to give him dynamic play through accepting any of his sacrifices, but in fact there's an unwanted side effect here of his sacrifice. This rook takes D7 possibility. If the queen goes over here, I've got this rook takes D7. It's just highlighted by the fact this diagonal's weak. But of course, it's so easy now, Avengers, just to go and see all the comedy of errors. It's like having someone much stronger than even Kasparov looking at the game and looking at all the missed tactics. But yeah, the exchange sacrifice was a bit dodgy. But so I have let him off quite a bit. So we get this game which the queen sack for rook and bishop is a little bit dodgy. You just have to get the most effective versions, and it seems here in this position the most effective version. I mean, he was actually visually thinking this is okay for black, but there is a certain version of this with a forcing sequence, knight takes E7, which leaves black really struggling. Technically, I think it's the easiest if white's going to try and win this. This is the best possible version for white. Would be really pushing. Black is going to be faced with two connected pass pawns here. So yeah, it's a story of missed opportunities, this game. But it's so easy to sort of see these with an engine after, of course. But I thought I built up some pressure, and I don't feel too terrible about it. I did sleep okay. It's just one of those things. Just in chess, it's very, very good to be incisive, and on longer games, that's one of the reasons, as opposed to blitz, to find the best possible versions of things. Whether you're winning the exchange or the opponent's queen, try and find the best possible version. That's my takeaway from it anyway. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.